Hey, let's chat about camper DIYs that aren't necessarily the most professional, but we did them anyways and how they kind of hold up. So, some backstory into this particular camper. I actually have a video on when we got it somewhere else on my channel. I don't have that many videos, so let's not pretend like you have to go hunting for it. This camper in particular, though, we did quite a few little DIYs. So, I repainted the kitchen. I did some, I ripped all of the valances off of the windows because those things were ugly. We ended up having to redo the entire slide. That was a whole situation. I also have a video on that. I don't know if I ever updated anyone though, because I'm not going to pretend like I have a lot of videos or have a lot of motivation to do these. And then just some other little things. So I did peel and stick tile in the kitchen and the bathroom. The bathroom I did, is it peel and stick? No, it's just it's contact paper. I did butcher block contact paper on the bathroom sink. And then we've done some other random things. Outside, we had to put this boat part on over top our gosh, what is it? The furnace exhaust, because we kept getting water in. So I'll talk about all of that in this video. So let's start with the peel and stick tile. So I'm going to pop wherever I got the peel and stick tile, if it's still available. I just got it from Amazon, somewhere around here that you can go use. I saw a lot of horror stories with peel and stick tile on campers. I saw one video in particular where this woman put up a whole wall behind her couch, and then it completely fell over in one piece overnight. So I was terrified of that and I didn't want it to happen. So when I put up this peel and stick tile, I did a few different things. I first did just a really rough sanding of our walls, because not all campers have this, but our camper has this, where it's that kind of shiny wallpaper material on top of the walls. So I sanded that down a little bit just to give a little bit of contact. I wiped that all down, and then before putting on my actual tiles, I ended up using Gorilla Glue spray. That stuff worked so well. I haven't had any issues with tiles falling off or even peeling up. I think the most I've had have been in the seam areas, or just a little corner. You can kind of tell that it's popping up, and I just stick it back on and there's no issue. You're gonna see from the videos that I didn't do a good job of this at all. So I didn't align seams at all. I didn't even go up to the ceiling in some parts. I didn't caulk properly. In the bathroom in particular, you will kind of see that there is a little bit of cracking where it was at the very top and I couldn't get it, kind of where the roof line meets. So I didn't expect the tile to actually be functional there. So I do need to stick those back on. They didn't fall off. They're just, you can tell they've peeled off. And in the bathroom in particular, I've had this weird situation. I don't know if it's the humidity. I don't know if it's I'm just using the wrong product. I first used a silicone to try and seal the edges of the shower. That cracked. It dried and cracked. So I ripped that out, and then I got some literal bathtub caulk. Put that on, same thing. It dried and then just cracked. So that's why it looks really horrible. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but clearly after 2 years of living this thing, I've still dealt with the cracking, so it doesn't bother me that much. But overall, I've really liked the peel and stick tile. I think it's just a really quick and easy way to make your RV space feel a little bit more homey and less like a Harley Davidson store. My husband always says that about any camper that we get. He's the fresh out of the fresh out of the box version of a camper always feels like a Harley Davidson store, because it's just all one color. There's no character in it, so that always makes me laugh. Next up, let's talk about the contact paper, as we're already kind of in the bathroom. So I did butcher block contact paper, once again from Amazon. I'll link if it's still available, or if I can find it, or if I feel up to finding a link. I just did it in our little sink. It's held up pretty well over 2 years. I haven't had many issues, though I have had a few bubbling areas where it obviously water is pooled up. I haven't had any issues though with the pieces of it actually pulling up. So once again, I did not do a good job of applying this, and the caulking that you'll see is once again also horrible, but we've lived with it for 2 years and I'm fine with it, so whatever. It was kind of a pain to get on. It was the first time I've ever dealt with contact paper, so me with a heat gun and a razor blade, it was a whole experience, but I did get it on. It's not professional, but there is a little bit of like, it's not tearing, but it's parts or areas where it kind of like buckled into itself, and I just kind of tried to smooth it over with a business card. So there's some areas like that. Like I said, a few areas that are buckled or like puckered. That's okay. I think overall for just that little of a space, I'm totally okay with it. I'm happy with the product. I was planning on putting it in the kitchen, but I kind of backed out after doing the bathroom because that was such a pain in the butt for a little space. Our kitchen isn't huge, but like there are weird angles with it, and the way I wanted it in my brain, there was going to be a lot of cuts, and I didn't feel confident in my abilities with this contact paper, so I just left it as is in the kitchen. I do believe it probably would have done the same thing with like water bubbling on the surface and kind of left that issue. So I don't love the kitchen counters, but also, once again, I've dealt with them for 2 years, so I don't think I actually care that much, if I'm being honest. I don't know. But yeah, I think if you have experience with contact paper, then absolutely go for it. It gives a really beautiful look for super cheap. But if you are a complete newbie like I was, maybe practice on something that's just like a plain square or rectangle first. Next up, let's talk about that furnace exhaust area situation, because I couldn't actually find anything online of anybody else talking about this problem. So where we are currently and where we have been for the last year and a half, we don't get a lot of rain, but when we do get rain, it's pretty torrential. So what was happening, super weird, was water was coming in from around our furnace, and we were like, oh my gosh, there's a leak somewhere else. We were checking the roof, we were checking the windows, we were checking around the sink. All of that was actually clean and dry. The only thing we could think of is the furnace exhaust on the outside, which if you've never seen it, it's usually like a rectangle with a few little circles of metal. It's just so heat can be let out. We were thinking that water was getting in there in some way, capacity, at some kind of angle. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I feel like somebody's going to be like, that's not what happened at all. You're probably right. But to combat that, because it was happening every time it rained, and it was a lot of water, it was causing quite a bit of damage underneath our sink, and just kind of our kitchen in general. We got this boat piece. I'm blanking on what the name is, but I will throw it somewhere, either link it, pop it up on the screen. We got a metal piece for it, and it's basically just like, it almost looks like an exhaust hood over a stove, but it's little. We popped that on, we screwed it in, we caulked over it. Essentially, we didn't want to block off that exhaust area because we wanted it to still function. And we also didn't want to apply plastic because we didn't want to cause an issue of like melting or anything like that. So we used a metal one. Once that was on, we haven't had any issues with water coming in. So that is my like hypothesis of like, well, it could be this. We applied this thing, something stopped, so that must be it. I'm sure it doesn't look beautiful, and I'm sure anybody who is going to purchase this camper after us is going to be like, what in the world is this? But it's done its job, so I say 10 out of 10 on the DIY factor. Okay, last but not least today, I'm going to talk about our slide. So I do have a video, like I mentioned, where like it was a whole chaotic thing. And as two people who work full-time in this camper and we no longer really travel around, big inconvenience. So we had to rip out our entire slide bottom and then replace the flooring, mainly because we had this amazing futon couch. This thing was so comfortable. I will link it somewhere if you have a bigger slide than ours. It fit perfectly into our slide space. But because of that, it was building up moisture during winter or any rainy season, and it wasn't letting the slide like air out. So basically it molded over. I guess it didn't mold over. There wasn't mold that we saw. It just water damage really built up. And it happened before we got the camper. This was always a problem and we kind of knew it, but it kind of got to the point were there was an active hole and we were like, all right, it's time. So we took out the floor, we put in a new, just like really thick piece of plywood. What I ended up doing to make sure this doesn't happen in the future are a few things. So one, we ended up having to get rid of that couch, and it was devastating. We got this new couch. It's one of those like convertible things where like it can extend or it can like flip inside of itself. I'll link it. I'm not gonna act like this thing is comfortable at all. We actually have our friends who live just a few camper spots down. They always come and hang out with us, and they're like, yeah, your couch sucks. It's like, yeah, we know it's really bad. But it fits. So we got that, and then we ended up putting a little collapsible table next to the couch, so that it's not always just fully extended. And then we keep a electric chest freezer underneath it that works for us. So that is one way. It kind of prevents that moisture buildup, and we haven't had any issues so far. The second is how I actually installed the piece of plywood. So I knew that we wanted this thing to be like locked down from water issues. So I applied, I first sanded the whole thing, cleaned the whole thing. Then I applied, I feel like it was Flex Seal. I want to say it was Flex Seal, like the thick, stuff in a can that you actually had to roll on. That stuff was so thick. Oh my gosh. It was crazy thick. It was basically a gel. Took forever to dry, but it dried really thick and very water protectant. So I did that first on the whole bottom and then all of the edges. I didn't do both sides because there's no need on the inside. Then we took just like a blue tarp. It was like a medium weight. Yeah. Medium weight. Well, I cut it down to what, actually no, I didn't cut it down first. I just laid it on top of the Flex Seal, and then I started cutting it down, and then I ended up stapling it all around, and that was going to act as my like netting or whatever the material is that would normally be on the bottom of a camper. We were going cheap here. We were going with what stores we had. We have Lowe's, Walmart, and Harbor Freight, so we went with those options. So medium weight blue tarp, I just did that. I stapled it all over so that when we slid the plywood back into the side itself, no part of the wood was actually exposed. And then once that was in and we got all of the screws in and the like floor was actually in place, I took more Flex Seal, but this time the spray, and I did the entire perimeter of all of the edges. So the bottom of our slide now probably looks super janky and super rugged, but we have not had any issues since installing it a year and a half ago. So I would say that's a success, and I'm not going to complain on that front. On the note of a slide though, so when we ripped off the old slide, it had that like front cover thing where it was like the rounded edge. I took that off because it no longer worked because we didn't have carpet anymore. So we were trying to figure out how to do the front lip because our slide actually does come quite a bit up over the floor. It's not like one where it's pretty flush. Ours fully goes over, so it's about probably 2 or 3 inches that we had to make up, and I didn't want anything that was like an angle and then it made the slide come out even further just to like level it off. So what we did was when we did the like peel and stick laminate floor, which is whatever, it matches pretty closely to the current floor, which is good, but when we did that, we just ripped some strips that cover the front and we did liquid nails and then we nailed it in. But we found, this is like the most frustrating thing. I'm sure somebody's going to be watching this, if anybody does watch this, and they're going to be like, yeah, of course that didn't work. I did not know that. So we liquid nails it, we put nails in, it did not stay. They just kept falling off. They literally would not stick to this piece of wood. So what we ended up doing were these like L brackets that we did every few feet on the slide just to connect the top to the edge part. That's been working pretty well, but there are areas where like the L brackets aren't put in place where you can tell that it's just not stuck on. So that stinks. I'm sure we'll end up adding, I'm looking at it right now, I'm sure we'll end up adding more L brackets in the future, but realistically for us, we put those on about a year ago. We haven't had any issues personally. And I think that's like a true testament of like RV life and DIYs is things are always going to be pretty cheap and like a lower quality. And when you first put it up, you're like, wow, that looks not great. But you would be surprised at how long you could live with something and it just becomes normal of just like, yeah, it's not great, but like it's fine. It does the job. So that's how I feel about literally all of the DIYs in this video. But it's fine. We will be moving into an actual house. We just bought a house with a little bit of property, so we actually will be moving out of the camper and probably selling it because there is still payments on this, and that is a lot of money in this kind of economy. So hopefully the next people who buy it also are not fed up by my DIYs, but if they are, that's their problem. At least that's what I like to tell myself. Anyways, hopefully this information is helpful to some capacity, or it might deter you from doing any of these things. I don't know. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or how to live your life. I'm just trying to help in any capacity I can. So I appreciate you all. Hope you have a good day.